bullshit. I wanna start this one out as a technique is that you if you wanna do something, if you wanna do something like win in life, you actually have to be kind of stupid to win in life. So like the last thing you want to go up against is a stupid person, because like you imagine like I'm a respectful person, like I'm a respectful person. I go out in public, man. I ain't nothing but a pushover to like people for practicing persons, because here go this respectful person. Yeah, he's probably gonna be real respectful when I bump into him and shit. So nobody worried about that. But if you look stupid, you sound stupid. People are actually they're more concerned about you, because like they don't actually know what you might be up to or what punch you won't pull. And like, but it's actually the same thing. Like, so like, what's the most proper thing, right? Like the most proper, well put together person would be like some person like in a uniform. Like you see someone in a uniform and they look very one way that a word for an officer, like a person in a uniform, is like a smart. They look smart. That's actually what smart means. A lot of people don't know what they're saying when they say things. When you say someone looks smart, that's actually an older iteration of like that's like a person in discipline, like is as mean as a whistle, like discipline, smart. So in a uniform, you look very smart in a uniform. You look smart for being able to wear a uniform, but you also look like you would do things smart by wearing a uniform. But actually, if you actually got trained, like to get trained, like to make a uniform look good on you because you're trained, you do the most stupidest shit in training, and actually what makes you better. So like the main way to be good, to be smart, the way to be smart is to be stupid. Like okay, so I'm training your ass, right? Okay, do jumping jacks. Okay, give me 10 jumping jacks. Okay, now jump in the water. Okay, now stand on your head. Okay, now break dance. Now do a head spin. Now slap him. Now slap her. Now bend over. So all but that actually make you do all that stuff, and you become actually more smart like that because you're improvising like that. But also, you're harder. You're more clever like that. You're more intrepid like that. You're actually more efficient like that. And you if you can do things stupid, if you can practice being stupid, and practice getting better by being stupid, then you're more efficient like that. So sometimes stupid is actually the best thing for training, but also anything that would make you smart, you likely had to do things that would look exactly stupid to other people or be stupid in other circumstances. So your stupid people would be your more formidable people, and uh and things like that. But also, the more stupid you are, the more difficult you are to anticipate. So the only person or thing that actually can't be anticipated is a person that can't anticipate themselves, because if your decisions and your process is unknown to you, then it'd likely be unknown to another person. So the stupid person would be the formidable person. So also in like how they wouldn't slow down for conventions. They may act outside of convention, and then also they may not be restrained by or for the sake of convention. So a stupid person would be your formidable person, and the last person you would want a problem with, but maybe also the first person you would want to learn from would be a stupid person. So I wanted to riff on that a little bit, but just say that here I go popping up with a live actually after I already did a live today, and you might think that would be stupid, or like that actually might be the clever thing to do. So the sensible thing to do would be, oh hey, that was nice. Let me rest on my laurels. Let me rest on what I just did. But the smart thing would be the stupid thing. Hey, I'm back again. I'm back with the stupid thing. So, and not to mock people that can't that would have like a way of speaking that wouldn't come across clear or be difficult to speak. I don't mean to mock that, because that's not even funny in jest to mock the way people actually speak. But just for the sake of being lighthearted, is that I'm back on the bullshit. But I was thinking that, like, in another example of what I wanted to start the riff on is like, so a lot of people, you can I think that numbers in themselves can be arbitrary, just in that they're decided for, they're spoken for. Here go this lady over here. She's spoken for. She's not as compelling as someone that has not been spoken for, that has not been defined by a partnership, by a commitment to a partner. They're a little bit more. There's more potential there, a little bit more beauty by not being beholden. Now, it's ironic. I don't mean to throw salt on anybody, but there's a rapper that recently I found out. I think this rapper passed away. His name was Gang Star. I don't usually, you don't want to say that first word, even in like for educational purposes, because someone can misconstrue what you say just as soon as that word comes out. But there's an actual hip hop artist from the late '90s named Gang Star, and I was on the bus and I was listening. He actually doesn't write about speak about gang activity. He did beautiful hip hop. Some of your hip hop from the '90s is very enlightening and beautiful. Like you had him, you had Tribe Called Quest, you had Pete Rock. Now I later learned that Tribe Called Quest they were an offshoot or affiliate I think of what's called the Zulu Nation in New York City. The other YouTuber, I don't mean to just be name dropping and associating with people, but just for the sake of learning and truth and being open, because learning and truth and openness is good. I was a fan of Tribe Called Quest for a long time in the '90s. Me and my friends, like some of my dipshit friends that I reference in here, we were about those people because there was I've mentioned at least three or four of those friends. Some of us we would either be bumping Tribe Called Quest, we'd be arguing over what happened to who's Pete Rock CD. I grew up around there's some famous music stores in the world. In college, I had a class that was talking about some of the most awesome CD music stores like from the last few decades. This is like the mid. So I was there around like 2017, but at that time, CDs were being phased out, but they hadn't completely been phased out. But then they were more popular 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years before that. And when they were referenced, because some of the stuff you would learn about in school, it's already outdated by the time you learn about that in school. And that's because it's not because the schools are that stupid, like the music schools, although stupid is good if I follow my own rhetoric. But the schools, like say any school, so a lot of people don't know how schools break down. You have what's called nationally and regionally accredited schools. Young people might not know the difference. When you have a nationally accredited school, I think that the difference between I could be corrected, but the difference between a nationally and a regionally accredited school is that the nationally accredited schools, they have respect nationally among the different like professional venues. Like say you wanted to do like video game design or something like that, they're respected among the peers of that field nationally, but they don't have the actual pull that would they don't take title, I think it's called Title IV, student government money indirect, or they don't rely on it. So the way that anything works is the way that it's funded. So the nationally accredited, they can be more expensive, but you would go to something like Sally Mae. So you go to a different pool, got a different shark. So you go to nationally accredited, you're borrowing money from Sally Mae, and they actually may be more savvy. Some of your nationally accredited schools, like say you were to go to medicine, like say they've had like massage therapy, stuff like that at a nationally accredited, they may actually be more cutting edge and a little bit pound for pound more valuable, but not more transferable. They're more valuable than the regionally accredited because they can call their own shots. They can make up their own curriculum. That is the latest, most innovative, state of the art curriculum. So you'd actually, a lot of people, they'd mock you. National American University. I got my degree at National American University, and so can you. In the afternoon, you're watching that commercial come on TV, and you're like, yeah, man, they're trying to kill someone with that shit. That shit's expensive, right? But it's actually not useless because that National American University, pound for pound, it might actually be more cutting edge than the local state school that you would go to spend your tokens at the state school, because they call their own shots with the curriculum. That is, they can use they're more anything goes, no holds barred with the curriculum. So it might actually be stronger curriculum like that. But it's also expensive than shit, and you have to go to something like Sally Mae. They'll foot your education for it, but they're not worried about if that shit is transferable for you or not. And you know what it was when you come up asking us for that money, and we're gonna want that shit back, Sally Mae, at the highest interest rate like that, Sally Mae. But it could, if you actually won with that, if you wanted to learn about that and it got over for you like that, you might have a better training and make more money hand over fist than you would at a more transferable school like a state school or some of your older elite schools that take money from the government. Now, some of those nationally ones, they may also take money from the government, like in the form of a Pell Grant. So they'll give you with the Pell Grant, and then they'll give you Sally Mae. The Pell Grant, that's actually, I think that's state level, and you can get that and you ain't got to pay that back. That's good to go like that. But then the bigger bulk of your education would be the Sally Mae stuff, that is private funding that doesn't give a damn about like standards the same way as the government does. But then you go to like a more, for lack of a better word, respectable. That is, what do you mean with respectable? What is respectable? What you mean is transferable. That is within other. So you have a broader swath, sample, cohort, constituency of regionally accredited schools that take government money. So if you go to a regionally accredited school, you have more transferability because you can go to any other number of regional schools in their region and be and potentially transfer there because your accrediting is reviewed by the government, and so you're more viable with from the government standard. But because it is government, it has to be all the way standardized, and they have to review it. So by the time the government make up their mind what's good to go for curriculum, the state of the art has the state has already moved past the art. The state of the art, or the art has moved past the state. That's a better word. So the government is the state. The art moved past the state, so it's no longer state of the art. So by the time you learn about it in college, for lack of a better word, as the regionally accredited goes, you're already you're behind the art. The state is behind the art because they had to review it and solidify it and make up their mind, and it already moved past that. But the more nationally accredited stuff, they're actually more with the times, but they're not as respected actually. But when I was learning about music in school, they're teaching us about some things that are already outdated, like the world's best music shops. They're already outdated by that time because by then it was on streaming. Like it was more about streaming by then. It had transitioned from on-demand CDs to on-demand streaming, like your Spotify's and stuff like that. But we have a place here called the Electric Fetus in the Twin Cities, and they were pound for pound as the ranking of music shops and destinations the world over. They were one of your top 10 or 20 according to a music education curriculum curious had decided that this place was. And I had blown a lot of money there over the year at a local one. And one time I bumped in there and I picked up a CD by I think it was it Pete Rock? Was it Pete Rock? Pete Rock. It was like an instrumental CD. And when I asked for it, they're like, it wasn't on the shelf. They're like, wait, let me check the basement. By the time they got back to the basement, that shit had already been recalled. They recalled that CD for some reason. I don't know why. And then, but they're like, here you go, man. I'm about to, here you go. This you right here, man. You got that $10? Let me get that shit. Here you go, man. Hey, but make sure you don't lose that shit too, because that's a collector item now. Because we about to send this shit back. It had got recalled. So whether or not it's good to go in the future, that iteration you got right there is a collector's item. Good to go. And then I was with I had some friends that they were on that. They were like, back in the day, you had Fast and Furious. I had some friends that were like all about cars. Like they weren't the most attractive they weren't the most attractive people pound for pound, but they got on past that with their cars. They're about cars and shit because they were they might have been compensating with that. But one time they would do cool shit with me. Like they would take me out to like these car rallies with like all these they're probably the kind of people you don't want to be mixed up around. Like you don't want to be too far in deep with that kind of life. The kind of young people that got enough money to be having fly ass cars and that get together around that shit at night and shit when everybody's sleeping shit and everybody's scared of the loud cars and shit. They'd be the ones out there. But they would take me around that. I wasn't actually exactly interested in it. I actually just liked them as people. And I didn't like when people be speeding in cars and shit. I thought it was kind of whack. I was at least around it, and it kind of played into my lifestyle because I spent a lot of time around cars later, and then I actually got around motorcycles and stuff, and I had been used to that scene. I had been exposed to stick shifts, clutches with them. Then I had experience driving. I already been comfortable around clutches because one is that I wasn't afraid of stick shifts later because I had been around them. So they exposed me to the stick shift life, then later the motorcycle life. The motorcycle life, it can expose you to different experiences and different iterations of social skills than you would otherwise have. So I actually was benefited by them. But one thing about them is that I was showing them my CD that they're like, oh shit, what's that shit? And I was like, oh, I don't know if I told them that it had been recalled. They just liked the vibe so much that I didn't get that CD back. But there's nothing free in this life, even exposure to different milieus, venues, and scenes that might inform your actual life and your seasoning and play out in life and death for you. So all's fair in love and war, and all's compensatable in love and war. So we would be about like Pete Rock and like things like Gang Starr and like Mos Def, Talib Kweli. I think Mos Def and Talib Kweli, they came together to form a group called Black Star. Some of the content in there, I would even go so far as to put Tupac into that line, because if you listen to one of the most revolutionary things about Tupac is that he emulated what's called like RBG. So RBG, that's a little bit of a pun, or that RBG is a little bit of a pun because RBG are the revolutionary colors. red, black, and green. I've done other videos on this channel talking about what they can symbolize. Those colors when together, red, black, and green. But then there's another term called RBG, revolutionary but gangster. That's actually the feeling that you get listening to Tupac, revolutionary but gangster. Some people that would be about revolutionary stuff would say that that's exactly when you get in trouble and you go off the deep end, is when you try to mix gangsterism with revolutionary stuff, because they may not go together. Some things don't. I'm not saying that they do or don't. I'm saying they may, because some things, business and pleasure, don't go together. I'll be one to attest on this video, on this channel, with different experiences I had. Business and pleasure don't go together, and sometimes when you actually get in a lot of trouble and shit really went bad, on some level you may have mixed business and pleasure, got shit to go that bad like that. I'll be one to say that, to confess that. But then also, revolutionary but gangster might be similar, is that it really doesn't go together, because in the strictest sense, gangster is about money, if you're honest. So I think where people may go wrong is that it has been understood, and people have understood, is that gangsters run their communities. And so also revolutionaries, they seek to run their communities. Gangsters may and may not employ violence. Revolutionaries may and may not employ violence. But both gangsters and revolutionaries, on some level, they intend to influence their community. You could say that gangsters do so for the sake of money. But that's actually not wrong or not righteous, because some people, even the great Martin Luther King himself, I would go so far as to say that he may agree with the statement that there's no peace past economics. Some people say that he got the undoing of Martin Luther King had to do with when the economic component got in. He was okay when we were collaborating in terms of lovemaking. And sorry about that. That was a Freudian slip. When we were okay in terms of loving and socializing and communing, he was okay like that. But on a deeper sense, you actually can't love and commune and socialize without economics. So it may have been understandable, justifiable, inevitable for him to come down to all the way back to economics. You probably don't get the humanity, the equity that he sought, without implications and subsidies and the standing, the foundation, the circumstance of economics. So you could say that his end was inevitable, but it's actually part of his cause and his plight was the economic struggle. Some people have said that the way that he was courted into and presented to us, and his actual platform, it may have come into being differently than we understand it as layman people. But what he did with it was outstanding and righteous and changed the course of history. However, we understand his background and interpret him as a man, and not what we know of publicly, and not what you have to say about him. You can say we've all benefited in terms of what it means to be human and what we can access of our own potential and opportunities. We have been blessed by the man Martin Luther King. But also, and even if a person is not about integration in itself, the bounties that have come with people of different backgrounds have been afforded access to education, and what they have given back in different lines of fields of work that you know about and don't know about, even economics itself, money itself, whether a person it feels a way about integration, you're better off for what Martin Luther King loosened. All of us are, but I think that but like with Tupac is that, but so you could say that, so both gangsters and revolutionary people, they seek to have a say or to have influence on what the experience of life is in their community. So there's implications of economics in both gangsterism and revolutionary. And then, but sometimes gangsterism, it's more about profit. You could say that gangsterism is, so both gangsterism and revolution is about economics, but revolution, I think, is more so about equity. It's about economics, but equity within economics. But then the gangsterism is more so about profit within economics. And if equity is part of that, good to go. But if we have to dispense with some of the equity to get the profit and the economics, that's what we're doing. That's the gangster approach right there. So you may be conflating them if you it's actually a little bit of a it's a little bit of a natural, not a natural, but a inevitable marriage union. The gangsterism and the revolutionary, both revolution and gangster can employ violence. Both of them can suffer violence. Both of them have interest an inclination and a tendency to affect both economics and social reality both. But the tactics and the scruples of gangsterism and revolutionary would be different, and the overall outcome would be a little bit different as the profit goes. Yeah, so we just got equity for everyone, but what do we do with the profit now? That would be different between revolution and gangster, and that might be a gray area and a sticking point. But they say that Tupac, he was the sensation of revolutionary but gangster, because he did lean into the gangsterism, and he may have suffered for that, but he was a lot about that. If you listen to Tupac, so I would go so far as to say that some of Tupac's message, it reminds me of a little bit of a saint. To me, Tupac, he may have been one of our actual saints, because he took on, so he was an actor in the first place, and a thespian. Who is an actor? Nobody may actually know who an actor is, not even an actor, because that's part of what makes them brilliant. But also, you can't anticipate someone that can't anticipate themselves, and you also can't define someone that can't define someone themselves. So you can neither define nor anticipate an actor, a thespian. And so Tupac, he was a thespian in the first place. That was his background and training. Then he had experiences. He took on the likeness of a gangster. According to Osho, you can get a lot of what makes Hollywood crazy is that you have so many actors in Hollywood practicing acting, taking on roles, that they may actually get mixed in with their roles. And art imitate life, life imitate art, but all that is imitated by actors, and people also imitate actors. So you can get lost in the acting like that, but be a better actor for that. But that's like who Tupac was. So some people would say that Tupac was acting like a gangster, but that's actually part of what it is to be a gangster, and also to act like a gangster. And so he took that on. But that whole time within that, I could appreciate as a child that Tupac had some real messages. I remember one time when I was in school, I I I I coerced. I don't mean to be egregious, but I coerced and used my best pleading to ask my mom to help me buy a Tupac album, because I remember he had this Tupac he had the song "I'd Rather Be a Nigga." I That song spoke to me, and I wanted to hear what that song was about while owning the CD. So I went out of my way to ask for support to buy a Tupac CD called "I'd Rather Be a Nigga." Damn it. God bless him for that title right there. But I don't mean to be egregious, because that word has been leveled to hurt a lot of people, and that word can injure us when we use it inappropriately, or when it's used against us. So I don't mean to make light about that word right there. But that's actually an outstanding title. I'd rather have it tough. That's what he's saying, Tupac. I'd rather have it tough, and I'd rather be the type of person that is forged by having it tough, and that also chose to have it tough. That's like what I hear in that title. I'd rather be a Nigga. Um, and you don't actually got to be you don't necessarily have to be of any ethnicity or race, because how we understand ethnicity and race is arbitrary as human beings. Because you can meet some people that be called boy that think exactly like an Nigga, and if they had it their way, they'd rather be called a Nigga because they like it tough like that. So I'm not. That's just I was just saying we're all human in the first place. I'd rather be a human that got shit tough, that overcomes shit like that. Nigga. God bless and shout out Tupac for that one right. Uh, in his message, he would be exactly engendering and aiming his message at marginal. I would imagine a lot of people at risk, like even myself. I didn't come from like a neighborhood with a rep and stuff like that. But just the way that I fit in and didn't fit in, I could be a person at risk, like coming up in life. And Tupac, he aimed his message at people that were in that life. He had some, like a lot of he had a lot of like content that was that was about people. Like, how many people do you know that actually wrote a song that was aimed at benefiting the self-esteem of single mothers? Brenda Got a Baby. How many? Um, uh, uh, if you know about the history between Tupac and his mom, it wasn't all roses. Yet he had that song, "Dear Mama." May Tupac rest in heaven and watch over us for the songs "Brenda Got a Baby," "Dear Mama," and the title "I'd Rather Be a Nigga." I'm gonna just land that one right there. May Tupac rest in heaven for that and watch over all of us for that and through those titles as we still bump those ones. Tupac Shakur right there. But he was a little bit of that revolutionary but gangster. Um, and so like you had some different people that were like that in the 90s. Like you had you had um, you had so Mos Def and Talib Kweli were brilliant alone, and they had a lot of that message. But then they came together and they had the group Black Star together. But then you also had the singer Gang Starr that was like that. And Gang, I don't think that Gang Starr was actually writing about gang activity, but he had that type of that was just his name. And I think I heard some. I was on the bus and I heard someone doing a listening that we may have lost him recently, and he was the type of person that me and my friend would be bumping. But he had this one song about this woman. He's like, she knows what she wants, she knows what she wants, and just how to get it. So he's talking about this woman who's like a little bit out of reach, like she's out of reach for the normal person, but that don't stop the regular person from taking their shot at her, even though she got a ring on. That's why I brought him up because he had that song. But he just had these kind of songs that make a person think about that, because like, where young people think about that, like, damn, what do that mean in 1999, 2000, for a beautiful woman to be walking, but she got a ring on her finger? What do that mean? Like in the year 2000, like that'll make a young person think about that. He had that as a lyric. But I was saying is that like but sometimes what will make a person more beautiful or less beautiful is whether they're spoken for or not. So a married woman would be spoken for. So I forgot what got me on that tangent right there. But 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 what I wanted to go with this is that like sometimes like so numbers, that's what I want to say. So numbers are, nothing is spoken for in this life, not even what we would call numbers. And I think that we get things messed up when we understand things in terms of numbers. Like for example, I'm in sunshine right now, right? So a scientist would say the rays of the sun, as in plural rays, individual rays. How does a ray that, so the sun is unity part, what unity do you know without the sun reigning over it? What can you see of unity without the sun? The sun is unity. There's, when you think of unity, no more unifying good, bad, and ugly, and you wouldn't actually be able to appreciate whether someone's good, bad, or ugly without the sun on them. But then, if the sun is unity, how does the sun come into having individual, that is self-centered rays, individual self-centered rays? Some of our approach towards numbers, I think it comes from some of our economic history, the implications of a feudal reality, feudal society that we descend from and that we're still within and that we operate along. Example would be like inheritance. This is my father, brother, sister, cousin twice removed. That's exactly how you would break down property in a will, inheritance. That's very significant in a feudal society because you have life without implications of the inheritance of property or the standing in life, like such as education, that you would have by your privilege in standing next to your family and what they benefited you, nepotism, but also inheritance in the first place. So, and it plays into a very individual society that consumerism stokes, bolsters, and also ratchets and gets over on us. So we a lot of the ways that people get over on one another, and a society gets over on its members and uses its members, is a lot about that. So do we really, how do you come to have numbers of rays of the sun if the sun is unity and love par excellence? How do you have individual rays coming from there? It's not that you don't, but what you more so probably have is like dynamics of angles. I want to say that angles may be not arbitrary. Angles are significant, but numbers in themselves are arbitrary just because they're decided for to a degree. But the moment you believe in numbers as decided for, they're arbitrary like that. So you could maybe even say if a human being is decided for, it's arbitrary to have to approach them as though they're decided for, even where their spouse, to engage them as though they're decided for, even though they're their spouse. That could be egregious in that, yeah, I know I'm married to you, but that doesn't mean I owe you something, something like that. But so numbers are like that in that they become arbitrary when they're decided for, but the angles, that's significant. So we can appreciate symmetry with numbers. That is, we can have a workable life because of the angles, and we appreciate symmetry and can do things with it based on angles. So I'm saying angle is more significant than numbers, but so humans are anthropomorphic. We overlay our human standpoint onto the things we say, do, and perceive, such as numbers. So the numbers come from the Hindu Arabic scheme of appreciating symmetry based on the symmetry of our fingers. The 10 the 10 digits of our fingers represent the 10 placeholders in the original, the numbers 1 through 9, and the placeholder 0 is the Hindu Arabic. That's what the Hindu Arabic number system is: 1 through 9 and 0. And the implications of symmetry that we can do with that based on our fingers, which are also symmetrical. But when we say that that's all that we are, and that's all that reality is, as decided for, that's arbitrary like that. But so I want to say, so like a lot, so like music. I'm learning about music right now, and in music, you a lot of times, so the human being, like a lot of times you would say that the number, a lot of people they'd hear the number 6, and they think that it's spooky to hear the number 6, but they don't actually know why the number 6 would be spooky. And if you break down what the numbers can represent in some of the ancient people, the number 7 represented God. I can't actually enunciate all the ways that the number 7 can be referential of God, but we know that in some of your holy texts, the holy texts are significant in the numbers, that there's nothing of waste in the text, not the least of which numbers. And the number 7 has been synonymous with who and what is great and beautiful 7 is. There are ostensibly 7 numbers in the normal music, in the diatonic musical scale, that is major. In the major scale, you have 7 notes like that. I believe you have 7 basic colors in the rainbow. That alone can say a lot about what the number 7 is. The number 6, according to the Wu-Tang Manual by RZA, the number 6 is reminiscent of a man: leg, arm, head. There's 7. So I'm sorry. The human body has you have 4 extremities. You have 4 appendages: your 2 legs and your 2 arms. You have a head and you have a torso. That's 6. So therefore, the number 6 is man. Man is near about the wickedest thing, because man can approach and imitate man's creator. However, in a way, man is actually freer than his creator, because the creator is bound by righteousness. The creator cannot overstep their own standpoint as righteous and respecting of people's free will. The creator cannot do so and still bear the standing in the name of creator that is righteous. But a man can, because a man can near about imitate, mock, and is possessed of a lot of the essence of his creator, because he is a lesser form of his creator. But then he's also free to err. A man is free to err. Therefore, a man cannot override the free will of another person, but a man can tempt another person with his own likeness. A man in his likeness of his creator, but also some of his talent, which is from his creator, but can reach next to his creator with practice, can furnish an actual enticement to another person, to get that other person to err. They apply leverage to that person, and coerce that person to override their own free will, which is actually the highest form of violence right there. So that's some of how the number 6 can be appreciated as profound. But then also, 7 is the number of the diatonic scale. A lot of your music, like your worship, I think we're part of the Greco-Roman calendar. That's the calendar we use, is the Greco-Roman. But also, some of our original music was, I think it's called Gregorian. I think that a lot of your harmony it's Gregorian calendar. Gregorian harmony. That is, it's related to the same worship venues that would be attended by the Greco-Roman calendar. I think I'm extrapolating and reasoning, but I think that Greco, I'm not sure if that refers to Greek. So you might be saying Greco-Roman or like that. But then Gregorian, I think that some of your chanting, your saints of the church in the past, because it's a lot of notes. But music in itself is not limited to that, because even the scale, right? So in the this is what I'm learning about. I'm just riffing upon what I'm learning about in different books. The main books would be there's like some of your grimoires. There's some guitar grimoires. If you go to any guitar store, you'll see a grimoire likely of guitar music. Grimoire in that by that. There's been different times on this channel when I was reaching for the word grimoire, when I was talking about things that have to do that are magical. I was reaching for that word a couple of times, but that's what it's called, a book of incantations maybe, but just magical information. It's called a grimoire. Music harmony is magical, and so a magical book about harmony with guitar can be called grimoire. And there's a lot of books that proliferate a grimoire series on guitar. So that's one that I'm referencing, that I'm learning about, and another one is called chordal theory for music chord theory for guitar that I'm also reading. But some of that information, it can overlap, and there's some parts that one book didn't cover that the other book did. And so when you combine books, like you go to a music store and you walk out with a handful of music books, a lot of people look at your ass like you're like, look at this pretentious person walk out of here with all these music books. But actually, when you combine music books, you could probably have insights that the people selling to you them to you didn't occur to them, but also didn't occur to the people that were writing both those books, or didn't occur to them to include in those books by combining them. So I'm just leaning onto that. But according to this book, this grimoire I'm reading, is that in the scales. So in order for you to have the diatonic series that we have in the West, there's you have 12 notes, 12 pitches in the diatonic scale, the major scale that's built on 7 tones. The combinations of those that give you the major scale. From another book, I can't referencing this book off the top of my head, but the most basic way to remember the diatonic scale, the whole scale, is whole whole half, whole 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 half. That is, we went hunting, we went rabbit hunting. I got that from a book. I can't recall what book. That's not my original mnemonic. I think when you have something that helps you remember stuff, that's called a mnemonic tool, or a mnemonic reference, a mnemonic melody, a mnemonic riddle, a mnemonic saying, a mnemonic adage, a mnemonic idiom. If it doesn't make sense on the face of it, that's called an idiom. Something that doesn't make sense but it helps you remember something is called that might be a mnemonic idiom. I'm pulling that out of my backside right now. But then also, like when I was in school, the first thing you learn is like face, the spaces. So when you're reading music, the spaces in between the staff can be remembered as face for the treble clef, but it can also be every good boy does fine, E G B D F, for the lines. That's also a mnemonic reference. And that's deeper than you think about it, because if you say so if I want to be rock and roll, I can write a blank check, and I can also spend that check with just about any woman, whether she's spoken to or not. That's pretty humbling to think I can actually get there if I play my hand right. But I have to do things good. I have to do things just right, just so. Not exactly, not good like a pushover, not bad. I just do what's appropriate, and I get to be a rock and roller and write my own check and all the things that come with that, like that. But if I get to learn skills and then I fuck off with them, or fuck people over with them, or fuck myself over with them, I'm no longer a good boy. At a certain point, I might have to get to sit down and watch somebody else get up higher than me and write their own checks and enjoy those checks with anyone, even including the people that I partied with and that I took a liking to and that took a liking to me. I get to watch that person go right on past my ass if I get dirty about that. So that's deeper than it seems on the face of it. If you would like to be a rock and roller, man or woman, boy or girl, be a good boy about it, and you can do that. That's pretty deep, like that's humbling like that, but also enticing. But then another one would be, we went hunting, we went rabbit hunting. So, but in order for you to have the diatonic series, we went hunting, we went rabbit hunting, with the notes that are available on the keyboard, but also the notes that are omitted, that is not used in that scale. But then for that scale to have meaning based on the notes within it, but also the notes that are omitted, then the possibilities that gives for the other notes that are in that scale and the notes that are omitted to also form scales that have meaning, that would maybe employ any particular scale or dispense with that scale, but have meaning for for the possibility of the other scale. Because anything you express, it has meaning both on what's expressed and what's latent. So as I'm talking, the way that my voice sounds exactly the way it does, because all the things that it is and isn't. So all the things that my voice is manifest has meaning next to all the things that are not manifest. So my voice sounds that cool or not cool based on how cool or not cool it could also sound if I would have been a different person. Hey man, why can't you be more like Charles? No, but why can't you be more like Charles though? I can't be like Charles because if I were Charles, I wouldn't be me. But also, if everyone were Charles, Charles wouldn't be Charles. And if I wasn't me, Charles wouldn't seem like Charles. And if Charles didn't seem like Charles, I wouldn't seem like me, even though you don't like me not being Charles. That's why I don't sound like Charles. That's why I can't be like Charles. Charles, y'all. It's Charles, y'all. We're just going to learn about music by learning about Charles, y'all. This is Charles, y'all. But all y'all can't be Charles, y'all. But Charles can be Charles, y'all. But not y'all, though. But if Charles was y'all, y'all wouldn't be Charles, and Charles wouldn't be Charles. And Charles wouldn't also be y'all. But Charles ain't trying to be y'all. Y'all shouldn't be trying to be Charles, y'all. But that's like the diatonic scale is that it breaks down is that you have to have seven general qualities that not pitches, but you have to have 12 notes. A note is different than a pitch is different than a tone because a note can be different pitches, right? So you have a C in this octave, then the octaves repeat. Now you have another C. It's the same quality, right? Because the frequency exactly doubled, right? It's not the same frequency, otherwise it'd be the same pitch. But it's a function or it's a redoubling, a function, a mode, a replication, a similar a redoubling of that pitch. So it's the same note because it has the same characteristic and it has a lot of the same musical function. It will function in combinations of music. It's in terms of harmony, assonance, dissonance, and consonance. It will have a lot of the same meaning because it's a replication and function, and it's a factor. It's factored by, factored for, and a factor of, and a factor, the same factor, as it can be factored out. It would break down to the same common factors numerically as another pitch would, but it's still a different note now because it's different. Then you have a tone. A tone can be so one note a tone can be, so a tone can actually be anything. It can be a note, it can be a pitch, and it can be I'm a little bit I'm getting a little bit past what I'm fluent with, but all I meant to say is that so that you have something called timbre. I'm reading a book by my own teacher. I reference my teacher at different times, so I'll actually go ahead and reference his name here. This is not to blast or out him, but to give credit where credit's due. My teacher is a man named Mamsila Alexandric. Um, he's a guitar teacher and he's written guitar books. He was in the process of writing a book while I was with him, and he gave me some iterations of that book. And he's a professor. I think he might be a master. He's a master. My experience with him was the experience of being next to and under a master. That's what it felt like, and that's what it amounted to for me. But I think he actually does have his master degree, and so he has a book on just a very simple book, but for pound, an excellent book, maybe the excellent book you can find on learning guitar, and his name is Mamsila Alexandric, and in his book he was explaining what timbre is. That's the tone, right? So on a guitar, so you have so on a keyboard, you have notes that will repeat, right? So you have different C's that will repeat. When they repeat, so a C in any octave is a particular pitch, but it's also a note while it's a pitch. You go to the next octave, it's now the same note, but it's a different pitch because it actually has a different frequency. But that frequency is a redoubling, an offshoot, a ripple of the prior pitch because it's the exact replication or a redoubling of the frequency, a doubling of the frequency. Not if it were two octaves up, that'd be a redoubling. One octave up, that's a doubling. And if it were an octave down, that'd be a halving of the pitch. But it's the same it's the same note thereby because it will function the same way in terms of assonance, consonance, and dissonance, harmony. Assonance, I think, is agreement. Dissonance is disagreement. No, I'm sorry. Consonance is agreement. Dissonance is disagreement. Assonance is the pleasantness of both the agreement and the disagreement. But that's what the musical quality is the assonance. And as I'm making an ass of myself in this stuff, it's high quality. It's high acidness. It's high assonance. As this content I'm reaching for. But just to say that in order for you to express anything, there has to be so you have potential and kinetic in terms of physics, potential and kinetic. But also for you to express yourself, there's the express, manifest, and then there's also the potential and what you didn't actualize. That also gives meaning to what you actualize. So therefore, any sound is contained in any other sound. If I sound like a pushover, actually badacidness is within my pushoverness, and the lack of badacidness that is sounding gives meaning as a pushover. So I sound like more of a pushover for how much of a badass I don't sound like. Or if I sound like a badass, I sound like a badass for how much of a pushover I don't sound like. But actually being a badass has no meaning without the contradistinction and distinction of not sounding like a pushover. and that too for pushover. So that's a lot what's going on with music and sound, and thereby for you to have the diatonic series, the potential for the diatonic series, you need 12 notes like that. But likely at any time, the book I'm reading about Grimoire is that for you to have a scale, as we understand a scale, that is do re mi fa sol la ti do, and it sound cool like that, it can either be 5, 7, 6, or 8. I think your recognized your recognized scales according to this book on the Grimoire guitar series is one of those. It will be 5, 7, 6, or 8. I think maybe 4 too. I think, but that's again, it could be arbitrary because there had been no limiting of numbers. So numbers are not limited. What you do with numbers is not limited, not the least of which harmony is not limited, but it's workable with that standpoint. But also with what Momcila Alexandric puts forward in his book is that as you go on the guitar from C, so I think in a guitar you have low to high C, and you have a couple octaves in there. I think so. You have 88 keys in a guitar, right? I mean, on a keyboard. 88 divided by 12. I think so. 5 times 12 is. I'm not sure if 12 neatly. I'm not sure if 12 neatly factors into 88. I don't think it does. I don't know if it does, but whatever. So the 88 keys on a large grand piano, it would break down into a combination of 12 octaves. So combinations of 12, each set of those 12 being one octave, and I think you'd probably have somewhere between like maybe 5 and 6. I think 12 would break down into 88 about 5 or 6 times. Is how so you'd have that many iterations of octaves, but then also you'd have that many versions of notes. So you'd have 5 or 6 of any note on a keyboard like that. But on a keyboard, as they go up like that, the note is the same because it functions the same. It's a ripple. It's some form of doubling or redoubling of the same frequency that gives it its quality as a note. But then as you change that frequency, the pitch is unique at those different octaves like that. And then actually on a real piano, on a grand piano, some of the implications of timbre, that is the actual the sweetness or of that, the sound, the character of that sound, is affected by the thickness of the string. So actually you wouldn't appreciate the guitar as a stringed instrument, but it's actually a stringed instrument. You wouldn't appreciate a keyboard as a stringed instrument, but the keyboard actually is a stringed instrument because you're plucking those strings like that. But in the guitar, you're plucking them with your finger, and then on the guitar, I think you have an ampersand or something like that plop on them. You also have a pedal that the pedal dampens it. It allows how much it's able to ring out like that. But the difference of some of the difference in the pit, the frequency, it's lent by the quality of that string at that octave. So it's going to sound different at different octaves because it's at a different frequency, but also has a different quality at that frequency based on the nature of the string that's being used there. That's what's said in the book by Alexandric, is that one note can be played different times on a guitar differently, similar as it can be on a keyboard. However, on a guitar, when you press a fret, you're changing the length of the note, and therefore the frequency, the rate at which it'll ring out, therefore the pitch, and also the note that can describe that pitch, but then also the quality of it, the timbre. So it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit more or less arbitrary, the timbre on any instrument, from like versus a trumpet, a wind instrument versus a string instrument, and then differences between different string instrument and wind instruments, what have you. The quality is different, and that might be what is unique about that instrument and cool about it, or challenging about it, or redeeming and enlightening about it, is actually the quality of what you can do with the timbre of the different notes. That's as profound as the actual difference in the notes in terms of harmony and expressiveness. But then with and I wanted to reference my teacher just because he put that forward in his book, and that's a keen insight in terms of harmony, to understand what timbre actually means. But our voices are like that also, in that our voice is technically like a stringed instrument. Your voice is like a string. If you look at your voice, but then also the quality of your voice, the timbre of your voice, that's actually really you, and that's not falsifiable. But it also has meaning in distinction to any other sound or any other person, is that the quality, the nuance, the eccentricity of your voice is what makes you you, and is why nobody can sound like you and be as cool as you when you're being the best you. But also you can't be as cool as anyone else also when they're being the best them. But according to this book, you have what you can do with music in the diatonic series is based on the number 12. But you wouldn't not likely be using 12, but you'd be using either 7, 5, 6, or 8 within 12. And you'd be, so if you use 7, you're omitting 5 to make that 7 sound cool. To use 8, you're omitting 4 to make that sounds cool. To use 4, you're omitting 8 to make that sound cool. That doesn't define or limit what harmony is, but that gives that 12 does. But then with the number 12, those scales you would do within 12, like 4, 6, 7, or 8. They're within 12, but you're using half steps at some point. So you have a whole, so from any note to the next note on a keyboard, which I think most of our musical instruments in the West, which are likely diatonic or intended to express diatonic music, they're built derived from what's possible harmonically with the piano itself. And the piano is built upon half steps. So from the next increment to the next one, the next baby step to the next soonest baby step to the next one, the note white to black on the piano is exactly a half step, because if you go from a white to a black note, that's a half step. Were you to go from a white to a white note, the only place you can do so on a keyboard from white to a white note is where there's not already a black note in between, therefore it's another half step like that. So you have 12 half steps make up the potential for the diatonic series like that. But the diatonic series itself is so when you're doing so, you don't go all the way in a whole step. You can't go all the way in whole steps on the diatonic series and be employing some form of scale that people are used to. You can't do that because you'd have to be using a little bit of half steps like that. But a whole step is 2 half steps, whole to whole. So sorry, I'm sounding right. Da is 2 half steps. Da is a whole step. So if you have the number 12 like that, according to the book of a guitar theory, the number 12 lends itself to different diatonic scales, including like 7, basically 7, like in a whole, the regular scales. Within that book, the Grimoire, it breaks down some more sophisticated or different, less known scales that are also out of 12 like that. But then the number 12 itself will also make 2 iterations of scales that are whole. So if you go every other note out of 12, that is some iteration of 2. That's one of 2 iterations of every other step. That would be a whole scale, like a scale that's on nothing but whole notes, and therefore to have either 2 versions of 6, two different potential for a combination of 6 gives you every other step to the number 12. So the number 6 can be very significant in harmony according to guitar chord theory. The number 6 can be the number 7 can be pivotal to harmony, because you would say that the number 7 is godlike because we have 7 basic notes in the Gregorian. I think Gregorian music was intended and conceived to honor God, and I think it uses most of the music we have is reminiscent of and built off of what had originally been praise music in the church. I'm extrapolating with that, and that's a lot about 7 like that. But still, to have that 7, you need to have the potential for 12. That 12, it also factors neatly into one of 2 iterations of whole step combinations. That's 6. So the number 12 gives the potential for our harmony that's about 7, but it also is a feature of and a factor of 6. The number 12 is a factor of 6 is a factor of 12. 2 6s gives you 12. So the number 6 can be very significant in harmony. And according to that book on guitar chord theory, a lot of musicians are not aware of that, or they exactly overlook that the number 6, they would appreciate that 7 can be significant in harmony, but they would overlook that 6 can be also. And so that there's much more that someone could run with that would have more of a background that could enunciate, could appreciate the value of what I'm saying there. But the reason I bring that up in this video is to say that if you appreciate all that I just said about music, and how it can work like that, with that book about guitar chord theory, is that the moment you say up or down as music go, you stick your foot in your mouth like that, because there is no up and down as music goes. The sooner you go up is the sooner you go down, because you for intensive purposes, as the function within harmony goes, you go from the note, so you go one pitch of C to the one pitch. So one pitch of C is a tone for C, is a note of C. You go up to the next, you go all the way up and don't stop going up. You will land on another pitch that is musically synonymous and functions synonymous with that prior C, that you're now at the same note C, but another pitch of C, and also unique tone based on whatever frequency, but also timbre you're using to express that other one. And so you are going up in pitch, and you're altering the timbre, but the essence of what you're doing as it functions, what's potential with the function of what you're doing musically, harmonically, as we understand that, for intensive purposes, your ass is another version of what you started with. So you're at this C, you go to another C, yeah, buddy, but you're still a C now. You start with this B to the next lower B, yeah, but you're still a B like that. You go from this F, you go all the way up again past A, but you're now F again. I give you an F again. You're like that. So what I meant to say is that nothing is better or worse than anything else, and the sooner you go up is the sooner you go down. The sooner you say something smart, or you intend to be smart, is the sooner you look stupid. The sooner you be yourself, which may be stupid to other people, is the sooner you actually get on with something that may be smart. So that's all I'm saying with this one. And I wanted to say that I'm doing the stupid shit. I had already done a live, but here I go with some more stupid shit. But I had more ideas, but that's probably an idea unto itself. So I'll land this one there. But I'm not sure if anyone tapped in this video, but my ass got to do it live anyway, because I can't actually record content with my phone right now, and it's a little bit more extemporaneous, that is spontaneous, that is on the spot, on the fly, when I do it on the because you're already speaking on the fly when you just start talking to a camera, but when people could potentially look at you while you're talking, that's another level that's another level of accountability, but also it's another level of challenge, and maybe another level of spontaneity. And also my ass can't afford different space right now on the phone, so that's where I'm gonna land it. I'm gonna do that like that, but just for another skill set. But I don't. Sometimes I'll try to sound like a little bit like a jerk, like to sound confident, or like just to get my point across. But I don't by any means mean to sound a jerk like this, or like full of myself like this. But such as I'm talking into a camera and I'm looking at my face for a reference of like, because as human beings we're social in nature, so we use the cues and reference of other people. But when you use your own cues, maybe that's the best reference, because you actually know what you mean. So the only time you're talking to someone that knows what you mean is when you're looking at yourself in a camera. But you can also sound a little bit full of it like that. But the purpose is not to sound full of it, but just to convey original thought like that as a skill set, and as a function of value. The skill set being a function of value, but then also hopefully the content. But then you also got to be forthright and honest for it to be real. And so I'm referencing those books. That's the Guitar Grimoire I referenced, Guitar Chord Theory, and then also my teacher, a great man himself, Momcila Alexandric, and I only reference him to give credit for his book, very simple, but pound for pound, as much as I gave over almost an entire library to the local used bookstore, because I had to, but also to if I'm gonna have to come off of books because of hard time, I might as well enter them. When you enter someone, that's when you bury them in the earth. But also when you press enter on a keyboard, you bury it into the ethers of online. And also when you give books back, that's a little bit like entering them into another library. But they're accessible to other people when you do that. So it's all's fair in love and war, and all's valuable that's forthright and honest. But one book I would not come off of, and I shall not come off of, other than by my cold dead fingers, or a real unfortunate circumstance, would be that book by my teacher, by Alexandric. Just a very short, sweet, a short and sweet message and lesson to guitarists that he has in there. And a cool thing he said in there, one of the coolest things I've ever heard as a student of life, a student of books, and a student of music, and is that he said that with his book, he's trying to get someone some very basic skills, and he's trying to get someone the confidence, the enjoyment of the instrument. and the confidence to direct their own learning past what he can offer. Because when I spent time with him, he would be the first one to say that he doesn't know all there is to know about music, and he doesn't know all that can be done with music. Even that his student myself, can show him something cool that he hadn't thought about or sound cool to him. He'd be like the first one to appreciate something cool you just did that he also couldn't or hadn't thought of before. He'd be the first one to say something like that. My teacher was a brilliant, a beautiful man, but he blessed me, and I'm more of a man for having met him. But he would just want to give someone some basic chops, and to get you to enjoy the instrument. That is to make a positive, affirmative habit of playing it, and then to direct your to set your own course, and maybe at one day write your own check with it. And the best check is freedom, free time, baby. So the best check would be to write yourself some free time to enjoy the instrument, maybe around yourself and some other cool people, which is the same thing. One love with this one. Peace.